Thank you very much, Hussein. I have with me a sports and entertainment lawyer, Sarah Ochwada, who is going to help me look at the Sports Act 2013 and how it's supposed to help federations, especially Football Kenya Federation, in running their affairs. This is just a guideline, and what are in the guidelines? My first question, Sarah, would be, who's a sports and entertainment lawyer? How different are you from the other lawyers?
A sports and entertainment lawyer is someone who has a specialization in the areas of sports and entertainment. So what I deal with in sports particularly is issues to do with national sports federations or sports clubs or sports persons. That's dealing with their constitutions, or if they have contracts that need to be looked at, I look at that as well. Sports event management, there's a lot of transactions that go on, so I help in piecing together the contracts that will give you a smooth flow of the sports events that you have.
You're part of the team that came up with the sports bill that is now the Sports Act 2013. Yes. What are some of the highlights that were considered while putting up this document?
All right, I think the most important part that I should mention is about the transition. Most sports federations are a bit hazy about what's going on, but the most important thing to learn or to know is what you need when you're going to transition from where you are today, which is under the Societies Act. That's correct. And what we're going into now is an institution known as the Sports Registrar's Office. Now, this office is going to be in charge of registering all sports organizations in Kenya. Whether you're a national sports organization or a county association or a sports club, you will have to transition from that regime to the new regime.
At what point do you register? Do you transition from the Societies Act to the Sports Act? Because both are in effect right now.
Yes, they are. Well, the Sports Act was passed in January, but it came into effect on August 1st, 2013. And what it says is you have a grace period of 1 year within which to go and apply for registration within the sports registry. Now, there are certain documents you're going to need when you are going to apply for registration. One of the things is a constitution. And by the bare minimum, your constitution must comply with Schedule 2 of the Sports Act, which says basically you have to have elections of your officials, national officials, by the members on the ground, okay? So your constitution must define who your members are. Are they the members from the grassroots? Because I know some, not all of them, but some federations only elect their officials through members who are at the club level.
If you look at, we're discussing football today, and Football Kenya Federation, they had the elections 1.5 years ago. Yeah. They did it from the grassroots. That much I know. The delegates were the clubs from the grassroots, and they were vetted, all of them. And they came in and they did a free and fair elections. Right. Fair enough. How does Football Kenya Federation now transition? Because they have to transit, even them. Yes. How do they move?
Now, interesting that you mentioned elections and transition. One of the things that's very interesting about this Sports Act is you are limited to a 2-term tenure period.
Starting when?
Starting from the date of effect of the Sports Act. Now, that's where the little difficulty will come in, where in terms of interpretation, you can't really go backwards, right? When an act is passed by Parliament, it's not passed retroactively. It has to start from now. So there's a bit of leeway. I could say there's a bit of, you have a new lease on life. If you've had people who've been in office for a few years, then they'll probably have maybe 8 more years to be in office. But then it will start with today.
The constitution of the sports organizations, there are those issues that need to be included in that constitution. I remember this was a bit contentious when it was still a bill. Yes. What were those gray areas and how were they sorted?
One of the areas was, as I mentioned, elections must be done by the members. The second area is the tenureship, where you're only limited to a 4-year period and 1 further term in office if you're an elected official, and that runs for all officials, whether in a national, county, or club level. Something else that's interesting also about this constitution is that you have to subscribe to your World Anti-Doping Rules.
That is WADA?
Yes, that's WADA, and the Court of Arbitration for Sport. Now, why this is interesting is because most sports around the world actually subscribe to the Court of Arbitration of Sport and WADA. In Kenya, what we have are different types of mechanisms to solve our sports disputes. Of course, you're allowed to do that. That's why we have this act. It actually empowers sports federations to come and strengthen their mechanisms for arbitration. And one of the things which has been included in the act is the sports tribunal.
Do you have, before we go into the sports tribunal, the last thing I'll ask you before the break is, before we go into that sports tribunal, if you, for example, Football Kenya Federation, they have to subscribe to Court of Arbitration of Sports.
Yes.
Their conflict resolutions, we know they've got issues within themselves even now. 3 of their senior members are suspended. With this, how does this come into effect? How does it sort that issue of suspensions?
Well, let me just clarify something first of all. First of all, you have to strengthen what you already have. So if you have dispute mechanisms within your own federation, make sure they're on point. Now, where the sports tribunal will come in is to just maybe give an award based on what your determination was at your national level. But if it's impossible to do that, then you'll go on to the Court of Arbitration for Sport, especially if it's matters to do with federation against federation, or if you have an issue where there are 2 conflicting federations which have come up, and I'm sure you've known there's a bit of a wrangle as to who's running football in Kenya in the past. Yeah. Those are the type of issues that they'll probably look at and try and resolve.
Well, we're going to a break right now, but before that, I'll read some of your messages, some of the tweets that have come in. This is from @Raf Masinde. You say something should be done soon or else football in Kenya will be ranked last by FIFA. @Kasmir Mogute says the problem is that we do not have national football academies to nurture young talents. Vimpino L, @Vimpino L, you say to change our football fortunes, we must start with basics. For example, change the national team's name from Harambee Stars, I don't know, to what. We take a break right now. We'll be back after a short while.